was certainly our intention with the
Yeah.
film. The what are you, a boy or a girl, is the hook. But then you expand that and you show how everyone's going through that all the time. By the end of the movie, what are you means like, are you a sociopath?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question more of us could stand to ask ourselves on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
If whether or not we're sociopaths.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is an absolute joy this morning to be speaking with Vaughan Murrae and Trevor Anderson, the director and star of Before I Change My Mind. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much.
Thank
Hi.
you for having us.
It is great to speak with you. Honestly, this film is so special. And it really is quite challenging by the end. There's some no pun intended, there's some real heat to it. Um, I was wondering, Trevor, let's start with you. Where did the film come from?
Well, it's my first feature film. I made about a dozen short films over the course of about 15 years and finally wound up with a story that would take about 90 minutes to tell. So I started with my short films. I always start with a true story and then jump off into like cinematic fantasia. With this one, I jumped all the way into fiction, but I started from a place of a true story. So I was a queer kid in central Alberta in the 80s, which is when and where the movie is set, and it's a queer coming of age movie. The first story outline that I wrote was really autobiographical, and then I started working with my writing partner, Fish Gurkowski. It became semi-autobiographical. In the end, it's fiction, but I like to say that the emotions are a true story.
Mm.
It really is. Like I said, I think what I've said in my review is the film feels very honest, uh,
Oh,
for start to finish, and really taps and especially too with this 80s vibe that's throughout the film. But Vaughn, I was wondering, what about Robin? Tell me about Robin. How do you connect with them?
Oh, when I first read the script and learned about Robin, I thought that they were a really interesting character. I mean, there's not a lot of non-binary characters in media, and to have a non-binary protagonist in general was, I think, really alluring to me. Like I found that I definitely connected immediately to this person. I think there were definitely different people, um, but they're a character that I really enjoyed playing and someone that I could, I think, explore, I guess. I mean, I did not grow up in the 80s, and I've always kind of had the non-binary terminology. So to explore a character who doesn't really have that, I think was really interesting to me. So yeah, it was a really fun time playing Robin, and I think you wrote an amazing character.
well, thanks.
Yeah.
Great job bringing them to life.
Thank you.
I was thinking about this just as you're saying that, Vaughn. But you didn't grow up in the 80s. Trevor,
Mhm.
I'm assuming you did.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I did. And certainly to present a non-binary character in a film set in the 80s was not something we would have necessarily gotten in the 80s. Like I think it's such an incredible move. So what was that like bringing that to life?
Well,
Setting it in that time frame.
the trick is, of course, that there wasn't language like we have today.
Mhm.
Non-binary would have sounded like a computer word.
Yeah.
So, which was actually like the in joke for us, is that Robin, the character Robin that Vaughn plays, their father in the movie is an IT expert, not IP, not intellectual property, information technology. He's a computer guy. But, so Robin, we wanted to make a movie where something's up, but you don't know what.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, the other characters say, "Is that a boy or a girl? I have no idea." And then Robin gets asked directly, "What are you?" But nobody has language for it, so it kind of just falls away. Everybody knows something's up. Nobody knows what exactly, so it just doesn't get talked about. It's always functioning, but it's not ever directly addressed. I didn't want to imply that this kid was sailing through Red Deer 1987 as a non-binary kid with no gendered pronouns. I feel like off screen, the kid's constantly getting gendered. There's he's or she's flying around, there's a gendered gym uniform, but our experiment was like, what if we don't point the camera at that? What if the scenes that we, the audience, get to see never tip us off to nail down a gender? And then I think we can be more in the subjectivity of Robin, who, despite whatever the world is saying to them, knows that they're experiencing something blurrier and more indeterminate. That to me was more true to how it felt to be a teenager in the 80s. It's not like an outside in kind of a thing, but it's definitely an inside out kind of a thing.
You know, I love that about the film is that this conversation, like it seems like every character is just trying to figure out that same question. I mean, certainly Robin is the focus, but the question of what are you hangs over everyone, especially Carter, as well. But I mean, everybody there just doesn't seem to know who or what they are, and they're all fumbling around trying to figure it out. I thought that was an excellent way to shoot it.
Oh, that's so great to hear,
Yeah.
because that was certainly our intention with the
Yeah.
film. You know, the what are you, a boy or a girl, is the hook, but then you expand that and you show how everyone's going through that all the time. You know, by the end of the movie, what are you means like, are you a sociopath?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question more of us could stand to ask ourselves on
Yeah.
a regular basis.
If whether or not we're sociopaths.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or just, you know, sometimes garden variety jerks, like everybody gets on a bad day. But you
Yeah.
know, it's important to check in on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is and so with that being said, and maybe this question's a little vague. And you know, Vaughan, you know, growing up yourself now, how do you know what you are? And I don't just mean gender specificity, I just mean in general. Like, what does it mean, like, when you're trying to figure out who you are as you grow up?
I think, I mean, I don't think this is like, I think it's easier said than done, but honestly, just doing what feels right is kind of how I've been sailing through my identity. It's not like that for everyone. I've had a very supportive family growing up, and they've given me a lot of freedom to explore who I am and just try different things and just stick with what feels right and move past what doesn't. They've given me that freedom, and I think it's really helped me find who I am. I'm still finding out who I am. I'm still really young, and I don't think any of us ever reach an end point figuring out who we are. I think we're always changing and we're always, you know, becoming a different version of ourselves. And I think just giving yourself time to explore that, be patient with yourself, don't rush the process, and, you know, whatever feels right to you is what's important. So that's how I've been living my life.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Trevor, pivoting away for a little bit here, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the parents in this film.
Yeah.
Um, they are fascinating because they're living their lives, but they and trying to ask similar questions, but they feel absent, but they aren't. And I was wondering in your mind, what you wanted to bring out with the parents in this particular story.
Well, thanks. That the parents for me becomes, like you say, it becomes another layer of a way to dramatize the theme. So you've got the world of the kids, where the kids are all, of course, in a coming of age movie, you know, the kids are figuring out who they are. But then the next step is, so are the parents, you know? So there's this, the B story becomes about Robin's single dad and another character, Izzy, her single mom. And, you know, those two wind up going on a date. And that's enough to fill out a B story for this movie, I think, and to sort of echo the themes where, you know, in the middle age, they're still trying to figure out, who am I, and do any labels apply to me? And if they do, am I comfortable with them? And um, so it just became another way to attack the themes from another angle, but also show that, like, something you don't necessarily understand when you're a little kid, but you begin to understand as you get older, is that adults are just making it up as they go along too, you know.
Don't tell anyone. You're not supposed to tell them that.
Yeah. And then in the middle of the movie, there's a third layer. There's a community theater musical. The joke is that they couldn't get the rights for Jesus Christ Superstar. Of course, we couldn't get the rights for Jesus Christ Superstar. So we made that the joke in the movie, that the theater couldn't get the rights. So the community theater impresario has written an original musical from Mary Magdalene's point of view. So it's Mary Magdalene video star in a very 80s MTV Cyndi Lauper kind of styling, about, Jesus's purported girlfriend. But what that gives us the ability to do is to do all the same themes of what are you, what am I, what are we, at a satire level in the middle of the movie for a bit of comic relief. So you can have Jesus hanging on the cross and Mary Magdalene is saying, what even are we, boyfriend and girlfriend or what? At the same time as the parents are sitting in the audience wondering if they're going to go on a date, and the kids are in the saxophone centurion chorus wondering what they are and who they are in relation to everybody else. So that for me is the moment that all the themes line up, and then Jesus can sing our title before I change my mind.
Can I just say that I don't think I felt more empathy for Robin's dad than I did during the 100 lashes. I'm watching it as they're going, it's like 45. And it's like,
thank you. Yeah, I mean,
oh,
of course, there's the biblical 39 lashes that Jesus is given, but we thought that's not enough for 80s excess. We have to do, 99, like 99 Luftballons. So that song is actually in the credits. It's called 99 Lash Ballons for any Nina fans that are left out there.
That's funny.
it's honestly, it's so funny that play works so well as that third story. I love it. I would love to hear from you both. I mean, we've talked a lot about trying to figure out who you are and whatnot, but as I said, without getting into too much with this film, um, in some ways, this film reminds me of that John Hughes era type style in the 80s of film. But by the end, I feel like the concept of innocence, usually these films are like, oh, finding our innocence. It's sort of been lost. And I don't mean that in any critical sense. I mean that is these characters just sort of are like, well, what now? And I was wondering what you thought about that idea within this film and why you wanted to present it in that way.
Oh, I'm so glad that registered for you because, excuse me, that was certainly our intention. Start in something very recognizable, an 80s teen coming of age movie with one little formal twist, which is that you don't ever nail down a gender for the protagonist. Okay, start there. And then open and open and open, as we've talked about, so that you're looking at everybody in the community through the same lens. But then there's this important shift that happens where you start to leave that behind, and it kind of morphs into a different movie. Which is for me, again, a formal echo of the feeling of adolescence. You start to leave behind the structures that you thought were permanent. And by the end, there's this big loss of innocence, loss of childhood, loss of innocence. Conscience creeps in for Robin. And that's enough. Just the realization that, oh, what am I can mean, am I a good person or not? I guess I better figure that out. Roll credits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was that like for you to chart that emotional arc for the development of the character?
I think it was really interesting. I mean, like you said, Robin starts off as just like this kind of mystery of a character, and the story is really about identity and coming of age and finding yourself, and I think Robin sort of goes through a journey. I mean, when they meet Carter, I think there's that question of, do I like this guy or do I want to become like this guy? And they kind of follow him around, and it seems harmless at first, mostly. And then you get to that kind of point in the middle. And I won't say too much about it, but you can definitely see that shift of innocence, and you realize that, is Robin a good person? Like,
Yeah.
do I want to root for this person? I was questioning that as well. I was like, what are you doing? And then kind of near the end, Robin sort of starts to realize that themselves. They're like, what have I been doing all this time? Is this really like what I want to do? Is this really okay? And yeah, roll credits. You never really get the answer to that. And I think that's sort of like the beauty of this movie is not everything is going to be answered. It's your job to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. So I hope the audiences go in willing to be in an 80s teen coming of age movie for a while and then have it start to, fall away as we speed through the wormhole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vaughan, that scene you're referring to, yeah, I you can sense that. There's this it's almost like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna give this a try and experiment with that in that middle scene that you mentioned before. And who am I? It really works well. Um, thinking coming back to you with that, Vaughan, just wondering too, if you could sit down with Robin, what would you say to them?
Ooh, I haven't thought about this.
This is when we should do the
Uh,
split screen moment, and then Vaughn is suddenly here as well.
yeah, I think I mean we obviously come from different time periods, so my advice
This
my,
is an iPhone.
You don't want to come from the 80s. You don't want that. I was
yeah,
there.
I think I'd probably say like, like things are confusing now, but don't be afraid to, you know, analyze yourself and look at yourself and ask yourself the big questions like, who do I want to be? Do I really want to be friends with this person? Do I really want to, you know, uh, do things with this person that I wouldn't normally do myself? I guess, and I'd also tell them to forgive themselves because they do some not great things, and you got to move forward in your life. So forgive yourself and do better. Is probably my advice, you know.
That's like the finale. We just did the finale of RuPaul's Drag Race,
Yeah.
where you your younger self, but
Yeah,
Robin instead.
but Robin, yeah. I mean, we're both very different people and from very different timelines, so uh I'm not sure if I would give the best advice, but I think just, you know, take a moment to look at yourself and ask yourself what you really want, I think is important. Because I think Robin might be afraid of that question.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And for you both are wonderful. As we start to wrap up here, what do you hope people take away from Before I Change My Mind?
I think, I mean, I hope, first of all, they get a lot of laughs out of it because I think it's a really fun movie despite the deep themes. And I hope that they maybe ask themselves, who am I and what do I want? I think that that's kind of the huge theme of this film is identity, and maybe it gives them a chance to look at themselves.
I appreciate that. Oh,
No, Vaughn nailed it.
Trevor's good. It's like,
Maybe I hope they're humming the tunes from the
Yeah.
musical as well.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's moot compared to what Vaughn said.
well, honestly, I appreciate the chance to chat with you both. Thank you for the time, and the film's great. I wish you the best.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.